Today on CityCast Houston, Mayor Whitmire has shaken things up once again by replacing the Houston fire chief. Plus, could a new move by the Houston Police Department help close more cases? And I have a new surprise for your Houston Natural Disaster Bingo card. Houston Press reporter Faith Bugenhagen joins me to talk about those stories and more. It's Tuesday, July 30th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Faith, what's up? Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just want to start by letting the listeners and you as well know that my voice is going to sound a little horrible today because over the weekend, I did one of my big community service projects. I like to do a big one every year. And we put on a big basketball tournament featuring teams from Toronto, LA, New York, here in Houston, all over. And I was the unofficial MC because I guess I'm the only podcast host. So all weekend long, I was using my voice. We were having a really good time. So that's why my voice just sounds a little off for those of you who are listening. All right. So I apologize, but everything is good. We're going to talk about what's happening in Houston.
That sounds good. I'm so sorry to hear about your voice, though. I feel like it's difficult, especially doing things like this when your voice is a little shaky. I recently had COVID and I lost my voice because of the throat issues. So I'm definitely in tune with you, and thank God I have it back. I hope you get yours back soon.
Well, Faith, I'm glad that you're doing better after COVID. And let's jump into some of the biggest stories that everybody's talking about. And I think the biggest one right now is the retirement of Houston Fire Chief Sam Pena and the immediate hiring of Tom Munoz. Mayor Whitmire announced his decision over the weekend, and there are so many layers to this, Faith. So let's break it down. Number one, former Chief Pena was hired by former Mayor Sylvester Turner in 2016 out of El Paso. It seemed like he never meshed with the firefighters union because more than 3,000 firefighters signed a resolution that rejected Pena's leadership, claiming he didn't fund or staff the department adequately and that he was siding against the union in the contract negotiations that were so public for the last few years. By the way, Pena called the resolution unfair and stood by the department's progress. And the Houston Professional Firefighter Association was one of Whitmire's top supporters in his mayoral campaign. Now let's talk about the new fire chief, Tom Munoz. He currently leads both the city's Office of Emergency Management and Public Safety and Homeland Security Office. Mayor Whitmire was over the moon with this hiring and said, quote, "He is an all-star, Munoz. When it comes to public safety, I'm convinced he will soon be the greatest fire chief in America." Faith, your thoughts on this, your immediate reactions when you saw this news?
Yeah, I think that Whitmire has been doing a lot of leadership shakeup ever since he came in as the mayor of Houston, which totally makes sense. I feel like there's going to be administrative change when leadership changes. I do think there has been a lot of turnover and change. So I'm interested to see how Munoz picks up the work that Pena has done. I know, as you mentioned, there had been some friction between Pena and the fire union. And I know that that was also because he was coming in from a different city, maybe not as familiar with Houston's department, but a lot of the Houston City Council members had great things to say about Pena's leadership. So I think at this point, we'll just have to see how Munoz does. And obviously, he has had extensive background in Houston public safety, as you mentioned. So I think we'll just have to see how he does.
Yeah, I also wonder, is this a retirement or was this a, hey, you should retire, right? Because Mayor Whitmire talked about this when he first took over, that he's going to give a lot of leaders about 6 months to prove their departments, to see how everything's operating, and then he'll make some decisions. And here we are about 6 months later, Chief Pena's out. So I wonder if there is some of this like, hey, I don't think you lived up to my standards if you're Mayor Whitmire. So why don't you just retire and we'll put somebody else in charge?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, to add, I know that the Houston Chronicle's story on this situation did mention that Pena had said that he did not have any conversations about the retirement with Mayor Whitmire. So I think that kind of adds to maybe a little bit of the fuzziness between what exactly happened. And as we saw, this did come out on Friday. So I'm sure that we'll have more development into the exact situation as the days go on this week.
Now, this is big news, and there is a lot of drama with this, right? But at the end of the day, do Houstonians really care who the fire chief is? What do you think? Like, to me, I don't think it matters, right? Like with the fire chief, you just go, can you just be there on time when I need you in an emergency? The fire chief usually is under the radar. So do you think Houstonians care about this move at all?
Yeah, I think Houstonians that may be plugged in to city administration definitely care. But I will say, I think that there's a lot going on with the police department, and there's just a lot going on in public safety right now across the board in Houston and the greater Houston area. So I think that it's definitely less of a priority, if you will. And I think, again, as you mentioned, the main priority is, are you going to show up if there's a fire? Are you going to be available for those public safety events, whether, events draw large crowds? And as long as you're able to deliver and do the job, I think that's all that Houstonians care about right now, because there's just a lot under the umbrella of public safety that we're being asked to kind of keep track of.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, this is going to develop throughout the next week, throughout the next month. We'll learn more about what exactly happened and some behind the scenes stories. So we'll keep you posted anytime we do hear about the latest developments. Faith, how about you? What is a big story that everyone is talking about for you?
Yeah, so the big story that I feel like everyone is talking about right now, and it's a little bit of a continuation over this past week's news of the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee passing away. She passed away on the 19th, and we're going to see a whole week of commemorative events in her honor after, again, she passed away shortly after announcing that she was battling pancreatic cancer. So those celebrations actually started on Monday. She was the second individual in Houston to be laid in state at Houston City Hall, and members of the public were invited to pay their respects. On Monday, there were reports that President Joe Biden would be stopping by on Monday evening to pay his respects to the late Congresswoman as well. And actually, Vice President Kamala Harris is scheduled to attend Jackson Lee's celebration of life services on Thursday at Fallbrook Church. And as I mentioned, events throughout the week will be taking place at God's Grace Community Church and Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, to again allow the public to really show the love and respect that they had for the Congresswoman. She was in Congress representing Houston for nearly 30 years, and we've known that she's done a lot on the local, statewide, and national level.
Yeah, it's so amazing to see all of these celebrations honoring Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee right after the announcement. There is a layer of sadness that comes with somebody passing away, but I think we have to remember to celebrate people, especially somebody who has done so much for this community, who has been there for the community. And I love seeing everyone out there sharing their stories and then seeing high profile members of our nation. As you mentioned, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris now is stopping by to pay their respects. What an incredible honor for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and her family.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I hate spam, and I know you do as well. And guess what? Spam starts with your personal data being sold every day. Data brokers collect and sell your personal information to third parties, such as your SSN, address, phone numbers, health and financial records, and much more. These insights are then used by scammers, total strangers, insurance companies, banks, businesses, and even the government to target you with, you guessed it, spam. It's time to protect your data, your time, and your sanity with Incogni. Incogni scrubs your personal info from the web. Simple as that. Incogni takes only 3 minutes to set up, tackles 180 data brokers and people search sites, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get Incogni today and never look back. Use code CityCast for 55% off the annual plan at incogni.com. That's spelled INCOGNI.com. That's incogni.com and use code CityCast for 55% off their annual plan. Faith, are you ready for some lightning round?
Yes, I am.
All right, I've got 3 stories here for you. And the first one is acting Houston Police Chief Larry Satterwhite has made his first big move to decentralize the department. Historically, it's been divided into patrols and investigative teams. But now Satterwhite has changed that by assigning several investigators to each patrol division across the city. Now, he's hoping that this will help close more cases, especially with the family violence calls. And they're hoping that this would be an immediate impact with that department. I'm so excited to see this move and how it could benefit the city and help bring justice to victims.
Yeah, I am too. I think touching on something that we've brought up is just how much has been going on underneath the umbrella of public safety for Houstonians. I feel like there's been a push and pull and some turmoil. So I think that this move is interesting. And I think that we'll have to see how it all kind of plays out. But it's good to know that it has been proving some effectiveness in terms of those family violence calls. And I hope that it continues to bring some change in how cases and crimes are handled.
This seems like a move that is so obvious. But again, look, I'm not a police chief, right? But just from the outside looking in, doesn't it make sense to have the detectives of the investigative team working with the cops who are on the streets, the patrol unit, and sharing information, going to crime scenes, going to calls if necessary, and just having more information and having more unity in both of these divisions so you can close cases faster. It just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I'm also not in public safety by any means, but I think lessening the, I guess, network of information so that they're able to get it more to the top up and handle it from there makes sense.
Okay, my second story. Are you ready for this one? We have hurricanes, we've got derechos, we've got mosquitoes, a lot of them, by the way. And now, Faith, we have sinkholes. A massive sinkhole opened up in West Houston in the gated community of Memorial Green, and the images are absolutely shocking. So, this gated community was built on top of cisterns. Basically, those are underground tanks to store water. And for whatever reason, maybe it was the rain, maybe it was structural integrity, one of them collapsed and brought down this green courtyard space that was between buildings. It's literally just sunken in. Now, nobody was hurt and the homes are okay, although some had to evacuate as engineers made sure everything was good. But are we really now stressing about sinkholes, Faith?
It seems like it. I saw the images in the article. I mean, going downstairs or going outside and just seeing a massive hole, that would, I think, freak anybody out. It would definitely freak me out. And I know that sinkholes have been reported around the Houston area recently. I think this is definitely not the first one, but I think adding to the list of concerns when we're already overloaded is getting to be a little bit of a lot for Houstonians.
I wonder how it sounded when it initially fell in. Like, that is a lot of land. This isn't a small sinkhole. This was huge. And just the noise and that shock would have been so terrifying. Now, I remember in Hurricane Harvey out in the Richmond area, one of the roads collapsed because of so much water got in underneath that it just eroded all of the sand and dirt. And the road literally collapsed and a sinkhole opened up. But this is so much bigger. You have to see the pictures. We've linked the story in our show notes. It was terrifying to see on the news as well. I'm like, oh my gosh, sinkholes are now a thing in the city of Houston. Okay, Faith, my final story for Lightning Round is more of a PSA because the popular White Linen Night in the Heights is on Saturday. And this year, for the first time ever, you will need to buy a $10 ticket to enter a portion of the party on 19th Street. Now, White Linen Night in the Heights started in 2006 and has become one of the marquee events of the summer where Houstonians can celebrate the arts, culture, and diverse businesses in the Heights. And it has grown to become so big. You can still enjoy it without buying tickets, but this original stretch on 19th Street, you will need a ticket. And if you want free areas to go, I've linked a story in our show notes from Houston Public Media where they outline where you can go without buying a ticket. Are you going to go to White Linen Night, Faith?
Yeah, I think so. So I live in the Heights. This is a huge event for all residents of Houston, but I think particularly those who lives in the Heights. I mean, I love living in the Heights. I think it's one of the best neighborhoods in Houston. And I attended my first one last year, so this will be my second one. It was insane, the amount of people there, and I'm only assuming more, as you mentioned, will attend this year. So I'm excited. I hope everybody celebrates, has fun, and of course also stay safe because there is quite a few people in that crowd.
Yeah, this event is going to be so big. It's going to be so much fun. It's just going to capture everything great about the Houston Heights area. And by the way, that $10 ticket is going to benefit the 19th Street Merchants Association. So this is going to be good for the businesses as well. And if you are going, make sure to tag us in pictures on Instagram at CityCast Houston. We want to see them and we'd love to share them as well. Faith, I know you listen. You love being a guest on the show, so you know what happens on Tuesday. We're talking about only in H-Town, stories that are so unique to us that we got to say, yeah, only in H-Town. You kick it off. What do you got?
So I have a story that comes out of the Houston Chronicle about a nearby restaurant, Midi Burger. So the current owner actually took to Facebook on Friday. His name is Sean Sailors, and he was defending the employment of a homeless person who he referred to as Josh after receiving several customer complaints. And I thought that this was just a great story and also a great move by Sean to really stand up to what seemed like very few complaints about employing Josh. He said that he wanted to continue the legacy of the previous owner of the business. She was known for a lot of work within the community and charitability. But Sean did mention that to him, this was not actually a charitable action. It was just him helping out a community member as Houstonians should. And I think this is so reflective of Houston as a community and as residents. We're all looking to help each other out. And you could see this really reflected in the comment section. There were really only positive remarks, and even some individuals who weren't actually customers previously were commenting that they were attracted to coming to Midi Burger and providing their business because of Sean's willingness to give back to the community. So I just thought it was a great story that was really impactful and indicative of how Houstonians are with one another.
That is so beautiful. And that is so good to hear that the community is rallying around the restaurant and talking about them, and people are going to go stop by and support them. That small act of kindness goes so far. And I love that Sean didn't back down and he explained why they're doing this. And he also explained that they have offered Josh to get help, but Josh doesn't want it in terms of clothes, getting any kind of mental health help as well. So they're like, all right, we're just going to pay you to work for us. And that is amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, I do think that it is just great to see. And I think to point out Sean's sentiment, he said that he's always going to aim to provide employment to those who need it. And I think that's so important right now when a lot of us are just trying to get by, go through the day to day. And I think one of the comments had mentioned, treat everybody with dignity. And that's so huge. And that's really what Sean is doing. So I think it's great. And shout out to Midi Burger. I think everybody should go and grab a bite to eat and also give back to the community.
Absolutely. Perfectly said right there. My only in H-Town, I know everyone wants a funny story here or something wacky, but this story from News 88.7's Patricia Ortiz is absolutely incredible and truly captures only in H-Town, because only in H-Town can our world-renowned medical center make history once again, because doctors at St. Luke's Medical Center implanted a valveless heart into a patient waiting for a heart transplant. So Dr. Joseph Rogers, who's the CEO of the Texas Heart Institute, said, quote, "The heart is electrically powered. The way the pump itself works is that there's a spinning rotor inside the heart, and that pumps blood into both the lungs and then out to the body and can provide a normal amount of blood flow," end quote. The U.S. National Institute of Health estimates almost 100,000 patients could benefit from this device. And Roger said that the device is still undergoing a safety trial and 4 more patients will be enrolled in this study. Faith, when I saw this, basically I thought of Iron Man. Like what we're doing here is putting a valveless, electric powered heart into somebody and keeping them alive. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's almost difficult to wrap your head around it. Obviously, as not a medical professional by any means, I think the work that we're doing within the Houston Medical Center is so innovative. It's clearly so groundbreaking, and it's also really special to kind of contextualize this and think that these experts, these individuals who are coming up with these ideas and working on them and making them work are here in our hometown of Houston doing great work, ensuring that the lives of Houstonians are better and healthy. And it's just so cool to really think about the talent that we have in that med center. And we're so lucky and privileged to have it.
It is an absolute privilege, and it is so cool to see what they're doing. 100,000 patients could benefit from this device, and it started right here, only in H-Town. Faith, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week, and can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I hope you all have a great week as well.
That was Houston Press reporter Faith Bugenhagen. You can read all of her work with the link in our show notes, and you'll also find all of the stories we discussed there as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with 3 friends who have a long morning commute so they can better connect with H-Town. And be sure to subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, with the info in our show notes. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. Buying tickets, by the way, I'm a mess. But